Tanya's best analysis of the day. Take it away.
Well, Jane, in my opinion, the problem is that the defense realizes that there's no real value in Zimmerman speaking to the prosecutor. I followed the Conrad Murray case very well. He spoke to the prosecutor. That's what hung him. They want him to be quiet. He wants to speak. That's probably the reason.
Tanya, how did the police handle this?
Well, in my opinion, I think they handled it very poorly. One of my biggest issues is how do you close a preliminary investigation when you have not spoken to all the witnesses? How do you have investigators who are not calling back witnesses who are trying to give you information? Now, I don't agree that there might have been a purposeful cover-up, but I think it was a lazy investigation at best. Because of the stand your ground law that's in Florida, I think a lot of the police officers pretty much lay back on their laurels and say, we can't do anything, we have no probable cause, we're not going to win this anyway. But now we have a situation because they did not do what they should have done, they're going to tamper and hurt the case should it come up down the road. There wasn't the proper evidence taken. It's going to snowball into a bigger mess.
Steve Moore, you're a former FBI. Tanya Young-Williams is an attorney and a motivational speaker. Easy for me to say, motivational speaker. You've had experiences involving these hoodies. Tell us about it.
Absolutely, Jane. You know, as an African-American, you're aware of your color and that there is racism and discrimination in our country still. So there are times when I'm driving from the gym and I have a hoodie on and I'll see an officer trailing me and I take off my hoodie and sometimes stick out my hand to let him know I'm a woman, not a black male. And the fact that that's even in the back of my mind is very, very scary. That's something that you won't have to think about and you won't have to think about, but we as African Americans think about why we may be unfairly charged or unfairly pulled over just because of the color of our skin. And black men have it far worse than even I do.
Yeah, who's going to win this battle? Give me a holler, 1-877-JVM says. Straight out to my dear friend Tanya Young-Williams. You are the estranged wife of former NBA player Jason Williams. You know the deal. You married an athlete. Does it surprise you, A, how nasty this has become, and that the essential charges revolve around alleged infidelity?
Hello, Jane. And unfortunately, I'm not surprised at all, but it's nevertheless disturbing every time. You have to understand, when we go down the aisle, just like every other excited bride, we expect both parties to adhere to the vows, and we expect it not always to be easy, but we don't expect the lifestyle that obviously Pilar had to live through. The infidelity, it's crushing to everyone, whether you're the wife of a celebrity or just an average woman. It is a hurting situation. Yeah, Jane, the rhetoric, the shallow rhetoric being spewed forth by these men who, one, are not wives and most likely have never met a wife, should be stopped. I take great offense personally because they assume that all of us who marry athletes were going after them. The whole gold digger issue. It's ridiculous and it shows a level of stupidity. I, like most of my women friends who are wives of athletes, are educated and who have had careers prior to meeting our spouses. It's not until you go down and you say I do that their lives begin to overshadow your lives. These gentlemen are just throwing.
You got two guys here. Tanya, you have the last word. Is it all about the money?
No, it's not. And I find it disturbing, Jane, that at the end of the day, we are villainizing this woman for getting married and saying I do, instead of looking at the fact and saying, you know what, this guy cheated and he's hurting a wife and hurting a family. We haven't discussed that at all. It's all Pilar's fault if we want to listen to these gentlemen, and it's just a shame.
Tanya Young-Williams, legal analyst and also the estranged wife of Jason Williams, and you experienced his trial for manslaughter, a different kind of manslaughter, but still, you've experienced this from the inside. I talked to Najee Ali, who is a community of activists in the African-American community. I've covered many stories with him, and he said this is a bittersweet day. He felt the verdict was just, but he said it was sad to see another black man go to jail, and that he found absolutely no joy in it. What is your reaction as a legal analyst, as the estranged wife of Jason Williams, and as an African-American?
Well, as an African American, I think that we've risen above thinking that someone should or should not go to jail based on race. I think that most people are happy that the jury has come to a decision, and if the jurors have decided that he is guilty, then the defendant, Dr. Conrad Murray, needs to go to jail. As a wife of someone who has been there, I know what it's like to sit through verdict watch, and I know how anxious you are, and you continue to try to feed yourself the most positive affirmations as you're waiting there. The problem with this is Dr. Murray had had to understand, as well as his lawyers, the jurors didn't take long enough, and therefore you would assume that it was a guilty verdict.
Yep, and finally, why is it so important for Janet Jackson to be here as the defense case begins?
I think Janet's going to be here not because the prosecution wants her there. She knows it's important to be a family unit. What the defense is not doing is having any support for Dr. Murray.
Well, apparently his mom's there.
His mom has been there on occasion, but the jurors, I've learned from the jurors, because they reached out to me after our trial, I've learned that having a family unit there supporting the defendant is key. Dr. Murray doesn't seem to have a support system. There seems to be dissension upon with the defense team. So I think that they need to humanize him however they can, but they haven't done it yet.
Now, what's interesting is that there are reports, and I just talked to Jose Baez about this, of all sorts of bickering in the defense team, and that, oh my gosh, Ed Chernoff took over for Michael Flanagan on the key cross-examination, and now Ed Chernoff has left Michael Flanagan's house where he was staying and moved into a hotel. What do you make of all that? You're there watching the whole thing.
Jurors can pick up on that. Jurors can pick up when there's a problem or conflict with the defense. First of all, Dr. Murray needs to be more engaged in the trial of his life. He sits there, he doesn't take notes. Jurors pick up on that. They can see when the attorney's body language changes. These are the nuances that people on TV are watching, but the jurors are getting that firsthand, and they're assessing what they think the defense has and their strong points, and they're also looking at them and say, goodness, they can't even get along? What kind of case is this?
Although sometimes when Casey Anthony was taking notes, I was like, 4 seconds. But just your reaction to that aspect.
Yes, drug use and drug abuse is rampant, and this should put the doctors on notice that we're not going to allow these type of deaths to come upon us again.
On the other side, fans.
They're going to go back in the jury room and says, if this is a mistake, is it gross negligence or do they think it's more? And the problem is this becomes very, very confusing for the jurors. So I think the prosecution has done a great job streamlining their case, and the defense is going to have to do the same thing.
You were in the middle of all this. What's it like to be a family member sitting there in the gallery, helpless, as this mega trial of somebody that you care about goes on around you?
Well, as a family member, I think I had the opportunity to be engaged as an attorney, so I was very in tune to what's going on. But as the family member of the Jackson sits there, especially Randy, he's there every day. He gets a hold of what the jurors are thinking. He's looking in their eyes. There are nuances that there are experiences that you have with the jurors. You communicate with them in nonverbal ways. And as a family member sitting there, you can assess after week 3 and week 4 what jury members really are supporting you and which ones may be supporting the defense.